When we talk about acne and blackheads, I always like to start by reminding everyone that these issues aren't a sign that you were doing something wrong. They're simply the skin responding to a combination of biology, environment, and daily habits. Every single one of us has pores, and inside each pore is a tiny oil gland designed to keep the skin moisturized and protected. The problem begins when those pores get filled with excess oil, dead skin cells, and debris. When that mixture sits long enough, it can become compacted and turn into a blackhead. And no, the dark color isn't dirt, it's simply the oil oxidizing when it hits air. It's totally natural, but understandably frustrating. A lot of people don't realize how much genetics and hormones play a role here. Hormonal shifts increase oil production, which means the pores fill faster and stay congested longer. And when the pores can't drain, they swell, get inflamed, and sometimes invite bacteria in, which is when a simple clogged pore becomes an acne breakout. But here's the key, none of this happens overnight. Blackheads and acne are a slow buildup, layer by layer. That's why a proper routine, one that prevents that buildup, is so important. And here's something many people don't expect. Blackheads actually start forming deeper in the pore long before you can see them. You might feel like your skin was clear last week and suddenly you're dealing with a cluster of stubborn spots. But the truth is, those pores were clogging for days or weeks. What you're seeing now is simply the final stage. That's why prevention and consistent care matter just as much as extraction. Another thing I want to emphasize is that oily skin isn't the enemy. In fact, oil is essential. Without it, your skin becomes dry, irritated, and even more vulnerable to breakouts. The real challenge is balance. Too much oil mixes with dead skin and blocks the pore. Too little oil causes the skin to overcompensate and produce even more. So the goal of a good routine is never to strip the skin dry. It's to help it regulate itself so the pores stay clear and calm. One of the biggest misconceptions out there is that scrubbing harder will somehow clean out the pores. That only leads to irritation, redness, and wider pores in the long term. What actually works is softening the hardened buildup inside the pore so it can come out cleanly. That starts with understanding the skin's natural rhythm. The skin is constantly renewing itself, shedding old cells and creating new ones. When that process slows down or when oil production speeds up, the shedding doesn't happen smoothly. That's when dead skin gets trapped, and that little plug inside the pore begins to form. Once you understand this, the rest of the routine starts to make sense. Preparation, gentle extraction, controlled exfoliation, and a balanced aftercare routine. What I want people to take away from this is that acne and blackheads aren't about being clean enough or trying harder. They're about understanding what the skin needs at each step of its cycle. When you approach skincare from that perspective with patience instead of frustration, you're working with your skin instead of against it. Clear skin doesn't come from a single treatment or an overnight fix. It comes from learning what's happening beneath the surface and giving your skin the tools it needs to stay healthy. And once you understand what's happening underneath, everything that comes next in your routine becomes easier, more effective, and far more rewarding. Before any extraction, before any treatment, before you even think about touching a pore, preparation has to come first. This is the part most people rush through or skip completely, and it's exactly why they end up with irritation, redness, or those tiny marks that stick around longer than the blackhead ever did. Proper prep isn't just about making the skin look clean on the surface, it's about getting everything underneath softened, relaxed, and ready. Think of it like trying to open a jar that's been sealed shut for too long. If you go at it with force, you're probably going to hurt your hand. But if you warm the lid, loosen it gently, give it time, it opens effortlessly. Skin works the same way. The first step is always a good cleanse. Something gentle enough not to irritate, but effective enough to remove surface oil, sunscreen, makeup, and pollution from the day. Once the skin is clean, the real magic happens when you bring in warmth and moisture. Steam isn't just something fancy spas use for atmosphere. There's actual science behind it. Warmth helps soften the keratin inside the pores, the stuff that makes blackheads so stubborn and compacted. When that plug softens, it becomes more pliable, meaning you don't have to use nearly as much pressure during extraction. And less pressure means less trauma, less redness, and way less chance of creating damage. But even here, technique matters. You don't need your face directly over boiling water like you're trying to cook yourself. All you need is gentle warmth, something that opens the pores slowly and safely. A warm towel works just as well for many people. The important thing is consistency, giving the skin enough time to soften without rushing the process. Patience is always your friend in skincare. Another key part of preparation is lubrication. It sounds simple, but applying the right products before extraction can completely change the outcome. A lightweight serum or oil-free moisturizer adds slip to the skin so your fingers or tools glide instead of drag. Dragging is what leads to broken capillaries, redness, and unnecessary irritation. That little layer of moisture acts almost like a cushion, protecting the skin while you work. And let's talk about tools for a moment. Even if you're doing everything at home, hygiene is non-negotiable. Hands should be clean, tools should be sanitized, nails should never be digging into the skin. Using tissues or cotton to wrap your fingers creates a soft barrier that prevents your nails from accidentally scratching the surface. You want controlled, precise pressure, not pinching, digging, or squeezing from the sides like you were trying to pop a balloon. During the prep stage, it's also important to understand your limits. Not every blackhead is ready to come out, and preparation helps you identify which ones are. When a pore softens properly, extraction feels almost effortless. If you have to fight with it, if you feel pain, if the area gets red immediately, that's your skin telling you it needs more time, or that you should leave it for another day. Forcing anything that isn't ready will only create inflammation that becomes even harder to heal. And there's one more thing people forget: mental preparation. Rushing through extraction because you're impatient or frustrated almost always ends badly. Taking your time, understanding the process, and approaching your skin with care makes the entire routine smoother and safer. When your mindset is calm, your hands follow. This preparation stage might feel slow compared to the excitement of actual extraction, but this is where successful results truly begin. When you prepare the right way, the skin responds beautifully, and everything that follows becomes easier, cleaner, and far more effective. When it finally comes time for extraction, this is the moment everyone thinks is the main event, the part that looks the most satisfying, the part people can't stop watching online. But the truth is, proper extraction isn't about popping or squeezing as hard as possible. It's about technique, patience, and respect for the skin. When you approach it the right way, extractions can be incredibly effective and leave the skin looking cleaner, smoother, and healthier. But when you rush in with too much force, that's when you end up with inflammation, scarring, or marks that linger far longer than the blackhead ever would have. Once the skin has been properly softened and prepped, the first thing to remember is that extractions should be gentle. The pressure you apply should be controlled, steady, and directed downward and slightly inward, not pinching from the sides. You're not trying to force the pore open. You're guiding out what's already loosened beneath the surface. If the plug doesn't glide out with moderate pressure, it means it's simply not ready. And if it's not ready, pushing harder won't make it cooperate. It will only traumatize the surrounding skin. People often assume that a little pain is normal, but discomfort is the skin's way of telling you that something isn't right. It's also important to understand the difference between a blackhead and a closed comedone. Blackheads are open at the surface, which means extraction is safer and usually easier. But those tiny skin-colored bumps that feel like little grains just under the surface, those are closed comedones, and they require more caution. They're not meant to be forced open at home because doing so can damage the skin barrier. For those, consistent exfoliation and routine care are far better options than trying to extract them manually. For anyone using tools, the same rules apply. A comedone extractor should never be pressed deep into the skin. The loop should rest gently over the pore, and the pressure should be gradual. If you find yourself pressing so hard that the surrounding skin turns white or feels sore, that's too much. Tools can help with precision, but they can also cause more harm than good if used incorrectly. Sometimes your fingers wrapped in soft tissue are actually the safer option because they allow you to feel exactly how much pressure you're applying. One thing I always tell people is that the goal of extraction is not perfection. You don't need every single pore cleared in one session. Skin has cycles, and sometimes what you don't get today will come out easily next week. Trying to empty every pore in one sitting often leads to redness, swelling, and unnecessary irritation. The skin will always react better to small, controlled extractions than to aggressive attempts to clear everything at once. Another key point is hygiene during the process. Even clean skin can become irritated if you're touching it with hands that haven't been washed right before you begin. Wiping the area with a gentle toner or an antibacterial solution between extractions helps prevent bacteria from spreading from one pore to another. A clean workspace, clean tools, and clean hands aren't optional. They're essential. And once an extraction is done, knowing when to stop is just as important as knowing how to begin. The moment the skin starts to look inflamed, shiny, or overly pink, that is your signal to pause. Overworking the skin doesn't lead to better results, it leads to setbacks. A successful extraction session is one where the skin looks slightly flushed at most, not irritated or angry. Extractions are not about force, they're about finesse. And when they're done with care, patience, and proper technique, the skin rewards you with clarity instead of consequences. Once the extractions are done, this is where people often feel like the job is complete. But maintaining those clear pores requires just as much attention as getting them clean in the first place. Deep cleansing and exfoliation are what keep your results lasting longer, prevent buildup from returning, and help the skin stay balanced instead of slipping right back into congestion. It's not about scrubbing harder or washing more frequently. It's about working with the skin's natural renewal cycle so the pores stay clear without irritation. When you understand how the skin sheds and regenerates, every step of your routine starts to make sense. Your skin naturally sheds dead cells every single day, but that process can slow down or get interrupted by oil, sweat, makeup, and everyday environmental debris. When those old cells don't shed properly, they mix with oil and settle right back into the pores you've just cleaned. That's where exfoliation becomes one of your most powerful tools. But I'm not talking about those gritty scrubs that feel like sandpaper. Those only create micro tears and irritation. What works best are gentle, controlled exfoliants that dissolve the bonds between old skin cells so they release without force. Ingredients like salicylic acid are especially helpful because they go deep into the pore, cutting through oil and helping to keep that pathway clear long after your extraction session. Think of it like a tiny broom sweeping inside the pore, preventing buildup before it becomes a visible problem. When used consistently, it reduces congestion, smooths texture, and minimizes the appearance of enlarged pores, not by shrinking them, but by keeping them empty so they look tighter and cleaner. Then there are ahas like glycolic or lactic acid, which work on the surface of the skin to brighten, smooth, and improve overall texture. They help lift away dullness and prevent those tiny flakes of dead skin from becoming trapped. For people who deal with rough patches or uneven tone, this type of exfoliation can make a dramatic difference. But here's the important part. More is not better. Over-exfoliating is one of the quickest ways to upset your skin's balance. 2 to 3 times a week is enough for most people to maintain clear and healthy pores without causing sensitivity or dryness. Clay masks can also play a helpful role in ongoing maintenance. They absorb excess oil, draw out impurities, and keep the pores from becoming congested as quickly. When used regularly, especially in areas like the nose, chin, or forehead, they can prevent that familiar cycle of buildup that leads to stubborn blackheads. The key is choosing a mask that feels soothing rather than tightening to the point of discomfort. Your skin shouldn't feel like it's being pulled like a rubber band. It should feel cleansed, refreshed, and comfortable afterward. It's also worth remembering that deep cleansing doesn't always mean using strong or harsh products. Sometimes the most effective routines are built around simple, consistent habits. A gentle cleanser that supports the skin barrier, a well-chosen exfoliant, and a mask used once or twice a week can do far more than a complicated routine filled with 10 different products. What matters most is choosing things that your skin responds well to and sticking with them long enough for the benefits to build. And just like everything else in skincare, deep cleansing and exfoliation are all about balance. Too little and the pores fill up again quickly, too much and the skin becomes irritated, oily, or inflamed, all of which can trigger more breakouts. The sweet spot is moderate, steady care that supports the skin's natural rhythm rather than disrupting it. When you approach deep cleansing and exfoliation with intention instead of impulse, you give your skin the ideal environment to stay clear, smooth, and consistently balanced. After extractions and deep cleansing, the skin is in a very vulnerable state. It's more open, more receptive, and also more reactive than usual. That's why post-extraction is just as important as everything that came before it. You've cleared the pores, you've removed buildup, and now the skin needs help settling down, healing, and restoring its balance. If you skip this step, even the best extraction work can lead to redness, irritation, or new breakouts. But when you care for the skin properly afterward, that's when you really see the glow, the smoothness, and the clarity that people love. Right after an extraction session, the skin often feels slightly warm or tender. That's completely normal. What it needs in that moment is calm. Products that soothe instead of stimulate. Ingredients like aloe, centella asiatica, niacinamide, or chamomile work beautifully here because they quiet the skin without clogging the pores. Think of them as a cool compress for the face, helping everything relax after the gentle stress of extraction. Even a lightweight, fragrance-free moisturizer can make a huge difference by restoring hydration and supporting the barrier. And speaking of the skin barrier, this is the part that doesn't get talked about enough. When the barrier is healthy, the skin retains moisture, fights bacteria more effectively, and heals faster. But when it's weakened, which can easily happen after extraction, it becomes more sensitive and more prone to inflammation. This is why harsh products, strong actives, or anything perfumed should be avoided right after extractions. The goal is to support the skin, not overwhelm it. One of the biggest mistakes people make is reaching for exfoliants, acids, or scrubs too soon after extraction. It might feel like keeping the momentum going, but it actually delays recovery. The skin needs breathing room. Giving it a day or two before reintroducing any active ingredients ensures that the fresh pores aren't irritated or overworked. Gentle care now pays off later with smoother and clearer results. Another essential step in post-care is controlling bacteria without drying the skin out. A mild alcohol-free toner or an antibacterial spot treatment can help prevent new breakouts, especially in areas where the pores were just cleared. But the key word is mild. You're not trying to strip the skin, you're giving it a clean environment to heal in. When you over-dry the skin, it responds by producing more oil, which can undo all the work you just did. Hydration is also incredibly important. Even oily or acne-prone skin needs water. Lightweight, non-comedogenic moisturizers lock in hydration without clogging pores, helping the skin stay smooth and protected as it repairs. A well-hydrated pore is less likely to become congested again because the skin stays flexible instead of dry and flaky. And then there's sun protection. Anytime you've opened the pores or exposed fresh skin, UV rays become even more damaging. Without protection, dark spots, redness, and irritation can appear quickly. A broad-spectrum sunscreen is not optional. It's one of the most important parts of post-extraction care. It keeps the skin tone even, prevents inflammation, and protects all the progress you've made. And for people worried about sunscreen breaking them out, there are plenty of lightweight, gel-based formulas that protect without clogging anything. Aftercare is also where a little patience goes a long way. The skin doesn't need 10 steps to recover. It needs thoughtful steps. It needs consistency, hydration, and protection. When you treat your skin gently after extractions, you help it bounce back faster and look healthier in the long run. And when the skin is cared for properly after all the hard work you've done, that's when the clarity lasts, the glow builds, and the routine finally comes full circle. When it comes to keeping the skin clear long term, consistency is really the secret that everything else depends on. You can have the best extractions, the best products, and the best techniques, but if you only do them once in a while, your skin will fall right back into the same patterns. Acne and blackheads aren't one-time events. They're ongoing processes happening beneath the surface every day. So the routine you build has to support the skin on a regular basis, not just during the moments when you can see a problem. Clear skin is a rhythm, not a quick fix, and once you understand that, the entire journey becomes so much easier. A lot of people expect immediate transformation, and I understand why. That's the part everyone posts online, the satisfying instant results. But what you don't always see is the quiet, steady effort that keeps the skin behaving between those big moments. Small daily habits add up. A gentle cleanse in the morning, removing makeup at night, using your exfoliant consistently rather than aggressively, moisturizing even when you feel oily, protecting the skin from the sun every day. These are the steps that keep the skin stable so you don't have to keep dealing with the same issues over and over again. And then there's lifestyle. You'd be surprised how much the skin reflects what's happening elsewhere in your life. Stress hormones can increase oil production, disrupt sleep, and trigger breakouts along the jawline or forehead. Poor sleep slows healing and makes inflammation linger longer. Diet doesn't cause acne on its own, but certain foods, especially very sugary or highly processed ones, can contribute to oiliness and flare-ups in certain individuals. You don't need to overhaul your entire lifestyle, but being aware of how your daily choices impact your skin gives you more control. Skin thrives when the body is in balance. Another part of long-term consistency is learning what your skin responds to and what it rejects. Not every trending product or technique will work for everyone. Sometimes the simplest routines are the most effective, especially for acne-prone or sensitive skin. When you pay attention to how your skin behaves, what calms it, what irritates it, what makes it break out, you become your own best guide. That's when you stop bouncing from product to product and start building something stable and supportive. It's also important not to panic when you have a breakout. Even with the best routine, everyone gets them from time to time. Breakouts happen due to hormones, stress, weather changes, or just life. What matters is how you respond. Picking aggressively or treating your skin like a problem to be fixed usually makes things worse, but sticking with your routine, treating the breakout gently, and maintaining the habits that support your skin, those are the things that help the flare-up pass quickly without leaving marks behind. And let's not forget the emotional side of skincare. Clear skin isn't just about removing blackheads or preventing acne, it's about confidence, comfort, and feeling good in your own skin. When you commit to a routine that supports you consistently, you're giving yourself more than clean pores. You are giving yourself stability and peace of mind. You're building a relationship with your skin based on care rather than frustration, understanding rather than impatience. Consistency doesn't mean perfection. It just means showing up for your skin a little every day, making small choices that add up, and trusting the process even when progress feels slow. Because when you stay consistent, your skin learns to stay consistent too.